Hi folks, and welcome back to 21 Days to Fred. We're on day number 8. Love your neighborhood. Well, we had great reaction from day number 7, a very special trip where we got a chance to go to strawberry farms. And some comments like on YouTube from Hello World says, I grew up in Santa Maria, California. We like to think we are the strawberry capital of California. Each spring we have a strawberry festival. My granddad was a strawberry farmer, and so I spent most of my childhood roaming the fields. I picked strawberries, punched time cards, chatted with workers, and snuck in a berry or two when granddad wasn't looking. It was a wonderful escape from the worries of the time, and some of my happiest memories come from that time. Thanks again for the video. The series is great, and you bring a smile to my days. Thank you, Hello World. And from David L. Peters at Explore Travel TV on YouTube. Love it. Used to go with my family to farms for strawberries and other berries. A lot of them ended up in our bellies versus the bucket. We used to joke that they would weigh us before and after. Well, it could have got expensive if they did that to me the other day, because I was definitely sneaking in a berry or two. Jacqueline Newhouse says, I love this activity you chose to do. I have an orchard and fruit plants. Well, then that was right up your alley. You know, I thought, did I ever go and do any picking myself? And as a child, certainly not. We were in the city and our neighborhood had no farms whatsoever. But as I got to be an adult and we had a son, we did do some picking. We went out in Colorado to various pumpkin fields for Halloween and picked pumpkins for jack-o'-lantern carving. And around the holidays, we would also load up the 4x4 and go up for Christmas tree picking up in the mountains. Always fun, cutting down a fresh tree and bringing it into the house. And it's houses and neighborhoods that we're talking about today, because Fred Rogers was certainly a person who helped instill a sense of neighborhood. Well, in the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, we're immediately introduced to Mr. Rogers' concept of neighborhood, which is pretty idyllic. It has this scale model of this wonderful place with these beautiful little houses and streets, and of course the trolley travels through this neighborhood to the land of make-believe. And also in Mr. Rogers' house, we find that there are visitors that are real neighbors, real people that come, like Officer Clemens and Mr. McFeely, the speedy delivery man, and Handyman Negri. These are real, live, flesh and blood people that inhabit the neighborhood. And it's a beautiful place, and we come to understand that all of these people make contributions to the neighborhood, and that everything sort of works in a wonderful, integrated sort of fashion. Now, as it turns out, as a child, as I'm looking at this version, this ideal version of a neighborhood, I look out on my own streets of Northwest Denver, where I grew up. At the time, it really didn't look anything like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. In fact, at the time, it was one of the highest crime rates in all of Colorado. And as I would go through high school, I'd come to understand that my neighborhood was really perceived as the north side, the wrong side of the tracks. And there was a drug problem, and there were gang problems, and we had a lot of terrible things that happened in the neighborhood, in my neighborhood. In fact, I even wound up being a foster child, and during that time I was out of the neighborhood, and it probably helped me more than anything did at the time. I would then go to college in Colorado Springs, again, a little time away from the neighborhood, but there was something that drew me back, and maybe it was that sense of neighborhood that I got from watching Mr. Rogers, and this idea that it could be something idyllic. And so I went back to the neighborhood and bought an old condemned building. And it was more than a building, it was an old house. I didn't know much about the history of the place, but I picked up this book, Rediscovering Northwest Denver, by Ruth Weberg. And in this book, I came to understand that my neighborhood, the North Side, actually had a very rich history. It was founded as the town of Highlands back in the 1860s when Denver was founded, a competing town. And then this was the house that I bought because I wanted to learn some history about it. I learned from Ruth that it had been built by a lumber baron. In fact, that's exactly what she says in the book. And so later, that's the name that we used for the bed and breakfast that we opened at this old condemned building once we did a total restoration of the place. So, as a process of understanding neighborhood, we really tried to kind of wipe away some of the negativity of the past and rediscover the history of the neighborhood, which was Highlands. We wanted to bring people back to the neighborhood that could contribute and help. So many of my friends from high school had moved on and gone to other places, but here we were back in Highlands. And so we started doing things called like the Jewels of Highlands house tour, which was a great way to bring people to the neighborhood and have them enjoy and visit some of the wonderful Victorian homes and arts and crafts homes, and a way to raise money for schools in the neighborhood for the kids. It was one of the many things that we did over the years to help kind of bring back the neighborhood and make it into something special that ultimately we would write a new book about. And that book was written by this gentleman whose name is, of course, Phil Goodstein. And he has written many wonderful books on neighborhoods in Denver, this one being the one about the place that I worked on, called The Lumber Baron Inn, Denver's Mystery Mansion. Pick it up at Tattered Cover or wherever they sell books. Well, I have a question for you. Now that I've shared some of my neighborhood stories, I'd like to hear yours. What was your neighborhood like when you grew up? And in watching Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, how did it inform your sense of neighborhood? And are you still connected to that neighborhood? Either just intrinsically in your heart, or maybe you still live there. Do you visit your neighborhood? These are great questions. I'd love for you to put them in the comments here on YouTube. Of course, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and check us out on Instagram at Walt Keller and on Facebook. Thanks so much for joining us for 21 Days to Fred.